Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Anitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks Podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it's also uploaded as a YouTube video under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu, while also being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Today, I'm with my co-host Teddy, and we're going to be talking about the new Ultimate Cup's overall reception, along with the fact that Digimon seems to have some uneven game design elements that are making certain things perform higher than other things. I know that's very broad, but we'll get into that in just a moment. And unfortunately, we don't have any tournament data at this current time. There was 2 events that happened. One was the very first Ultimate Cup, and the other was the EU, Nationals. So that one was a really big, really important event. We just don't have the data on both of those to be able to actually discuss what happened. Hopefully we should get that by next week. So right now, here's Teddy with the question of the week.
All right, so our question of the week, it's nice and simple. What do you all think of the trading cards? Now that we've had some time to play with them, how do y'all feel about them? Put it down in the comments below, or if you're in stream, shoot us the questions there, or how you guys think of it. I do think it's they're interesting cards to play with. They do dramatically buff just about literally every deck that can use them. So I'm interested to see what the community thinks of as a whole.
Yeah, I have my own thoughts and opinions on the training cards. I think they do some really good things, but I also think the things that we are losing because of them, that's definitely going to have some impact on how the game is going to be designed going forward, especially when certain issues are going to be compounding against each other when it comes to, talks about the game's overall pacing, because that's something that has dramatically accelerated because of the existence of these cards. And these cards are just that good that they've become mandatory staples in basically almost any deck that can incorporate them. Between them and memory boosts, you just have lots of extra consistency tools. I made a whole video on that if anyone is curious on some of my more in-depth thoughts. But those are just some of my vague thoughts. Is they are powerful, they are good, but good to a point where they could be harmful.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think they are good to a fault. They do bring some unnecessary speed to the game to a game that was already pretty quick. So now I think it was an unintended boost to decks that were already absurdly good. So it's like, I'm 50-50. I love them because they do make decks that are worse a lot better, more consistent. But the decks that are already good kind of are the winners here, even harder than they already were. So it's like 50-50. I can see both angles. I kind of lean towards it being more bad than good, but it's okay.
Well, especially since the marketplace has definitely spoken which colors are stronger than others. So I think that's a very interesting thing, and we'll lead into that later when we're talking about some of the design imbalances when it comes to all of the different colors and the unevenness of some of the game design at play, which I think for where we're at, we really need to be on equal footings for everything to kind of have their best shot as much as they can possibly be on, because some of them, just from a design and conceptual level, are just stronger than others when it comes to colors and decks.
Yeah, I agree very wholeheartedly with that the ideology, because it can be very volatile if they
Yeah.
lean one over the other.
Yeah, but this also kind of shows in the recent Ultimate Cup. So we don't have the metadata for the Ultimate Cup. We do know that Blue Source Stripping, I believe, was the winner of the Ultimate Cup. And this was just a very weird Ultimate Cup. Not only just to watch, but to participate in as well. I think the rule change to only using specific cards from like a curated list is kind of interesting. It does lead to some levels of creativity because we have to, build with certain design constraints in mind based on the card pool that we have. But I think based on not only just our reception as a whole, not like ours as in mine and Teddy's, but ours as in a community, but how Bandai looked at the reception, it kind of just showed it was a very unpopular format, and it's probably going to continue to be very unpopular until it comes out of the cycle, which we did get confirmation that as of February, this rule set is going to not be a thing, and we are going back to good old normal Digimon. And I was screaming for joy when I heard that news that February we're going to have exactly what I wanted, which is just normal Digimon with good prizing for an event. And we also know that the next wave of prizing is going to be a Goonimon based. So it seems like based on the trend, they are going to just go through the protagonists of each of the different seasons. Because year 1, we had Agumon. Year 2, we had Vmon. Year 3, we had Guilmon, which is what we're in right now. And then next year, we're getting a Goonimon. So most likely in like 20... Oh, God damn it. Most likely in 2025, we're going to see Shine again. And then 2026, we're probably going to see Shoutmon. Or no. Yeah, no, it would be Shoutmon.
Yeah, it's Shoutmon if we're following the line, yeah.
Yeah, so that's just going to be their trend that they're going to be going with. And I think that's kind of cool. I don't know if that means we're going to see some support for them, or if we're just going to get cool alt arts.
Yeah, I kind of hope they get more support rather than cool alt arts, but I'm not opposed to either, so.
Yeah. But as far as this event, the first Ultimate Cup, utilizing these new rules, yeah, it was a very small event. There was 174 players, and the event was so bad, it lasted 5 rounds when normally an event of that size is 7 rounds. So the games just took so long that there was too many ties to where it cut down 2 whole rounds. That's crazy. Already, just the attendance is something pretty bad to look at.
It's a marvel.
We haven't had that low of attendance since they increased the cap from 256 to 512. And that was year 1.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it hasn't been that bad. You're right. I don't think we've had any tournaments really that bad.
Like a lot of them usually like on the low end hit about 300, which is still respectable. But the fact that it couldn't even hit 200, that's just sad. And I say this like it's less than 200 isn't that bad considering other regions don't necessarily hit those numbers either. But for the numbers that we're used to, it really shows that people just do not care. Like, we just do not give a crap about Ultimate Cup. It could be because, Ultimate Cup ran too long and there were too many of them, so the prizing got not super attractive. The prizing hasn't really changed outside of the event pack changes, so that might be into play. Even though this was for more newer players, it didn't seem like newer players were actually playing in it.
No, clearly they did something dramatically wrong, and it shows with both the attendance and what happened in the tournament. But that, I guess, falls into what decks were being played and that kind of stuff. So
Apparently there was a lot of yellow. Like, just yellow recovery stall was
that
just
sounds
a,
about right.
yeah. Like, yellow as a whole, like with the recovery mechanic, it's not a I'm going to try to win the game, it's I'm trying not to lose the game, and that's usually not the type of mindset you're going to want to go into. Plus, a lot of decks just didn't have the damage output to be able to actually punch through 8 security. Like, Lugamon could barely do it. Then you had Greymon, that could kind of do it. Blue just tried to basically play like blue hybrids, strip the sources, stun the Digimon, keep them from doing anything, and then that was just kind of it.
Yeah,
Bounce whatever it couldn't stun after removing all of its sources, but like it was creating these game states where just nothing was happening and nothing was actually doing anything. And I think that was the biggest problem with this experiment is like not only did we kind of know what was going to be played and what was going to be playable, but like it was just so slow that it just wasn't even fun.
that is completely understandable. I definitely probably would not have had that much fun either if that was all I was seeing. I mean, it's one of those things. It's so weird because it.
I'm actually
Uh,
curious how many things actually had like security tech plus. So there actually is not a whole lot of security tech plus going around. You have
no.
pretty much tie for red, giving it to whatever red Digimon you're gonna do. Rise for yellow. Uh, then you had Black War Greymon from BT5, which probably saw absolutely zero play. Um, I forgot that Emperor Greymon was legal, but
Rise?
nobody's actually playing Emperor Greymon. Same thing with Shine. Nobody's playing Shine. So, like, Imperial Fighter Mode is another one. But I don't remember seeing a whole lot of Imperials when I was just flipping around all of the different streams, just seeing who was playing what. Like, I saw Tyler from GFG playing Security Control, yellow, blue. So, like, there's your prime example of a deck that's just prone to do nothing for the entirety of the game. It was kind of interesting. That's why he labeled it a pile, because I don't even think he was having fun. I didn't watch him all that long, just because I was flipping around. I know I definitely saw Lucamon. I saw a lot of blue. So yeah, I think like the format just with the cards legal led itself to be very slow naturally, even though we had fast evolutions. It's just between the recovery, the damage output, and just the lack of any actual synergy, it just seemed like nothing was happening.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, blue source strip also stunning and that kind of stuff. So it just seemed like the decks that did probably better, or not the OTK decks, but the decks that can just outright stop you from playing the game. That seems to be what it is like at the moment with this particular format, at least.
Yeah,
Um,
between blue and yellow, because like yellow, they had this stupid thing where yellow had both Magna Angemons legal. So it's just like, oh, I literally can just like play a
Slam
Magna
one key.
Angemon, recover. Play Magna Angemon Ace, recover. Can you reasonably punch through it this much security? And then I was seeing GFG Tyler. He was playing blue as his mix just because blue you have some pretty decent draw engine, and blue actually had removal options. With
Yep.
Cocytus Breath, where a lot of like removal was just not necessarily existent. So like it was just it was very boring. Like it was very boring to watch. I'm sorry, Tyler. Those games were awful. So I ended up watching Tesuro play Fenrir, and he went X and 1, and his only loss was to himself. Um, because he woke up late. So he could have potentially taken the whole tournament on accident, not knowing there would only be 5 rounds.
Yeah, that's insane. Like genuinely insane.
Yeah, so I think he would probably was in top 16 considering he only lost one
Yeah, only
game.
lost once.
So he should reasonably be within top 16. He could have actually squeaked out with how many ties because like if people weren't winning and people weren't losing, like I don't know. That's where tournaments and point systems and all that stuff is like sometimes above me. But it seemed like it was just a very not interesting format. And I think Tesoro also kind of was a little bit bored because his deck wasn't super explosive, but he knew his deck was more explosive than the vast majority of decks that were being played. So I think he just played well, picked a good call, and didn't see a whole lot of super bad matchups.
I don't think there really is too many bad matchups per se in this particular format. And he does, yeah. I think without all the ability to start like doing massive damage the turn it comes out, he does have to play good rather than just boonga boonga, which is a welcome change for me. I do like the idea of
Well, I
having to
mean,
play good.
so like his games, even though he didn't have the Black Automons to give rush, his games literally ended all the exact same way. It was, let me
Yep.
punch a lot of your security through my like big alliance combo turn, and then I can't finish the game, but can you honestly handle these 4 to 5 Digimon that I just spawned? And the answer for almost every single deck was no. They did not have an answer for a wide field because there was no answer for a wide field. Like, I'm looking at the options that are legal, and it's just like, okay, Cocytus Breath is like the best removal option that is actually legal currently, because we don't have the EX cards. And then outside of that, you get like Pummel Whack, Heaven's Knuckle. Like, the second best one is probably Ultimate Flare, and that's it. That's like all of the removal there is. I guess technically Mega Flame is removal. You could kind of make an argument for Marching Fishes to be removal too, because it stuns the Digimon. But like, there really wasn't a whole lot of things that was stopping what Fenrir can do. And even though Fenrir didn't take the event, it definitely just seemed like, compared to everything else everything was doing, it was easily one of the better stuff, with blue source stripping being the only thing that could actually capitalize on a wide field with no sources.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense because blue's really the only deck that would punish you for leaving things on the board at the current, at least in that format, that can punish them easily, I should say. Um, so the top decks, it kind of all makes sense what decks were going to be good.
Yeah, I'm curious to see the breakdown when we actually get that.
I I'm very interested to see. Seeing it was such a low attendance, I'm interested to see what, and for the way it came out. I mean, all the times. I have to imagine there was an ungodly amount of yellow.
Oh, because I mean, yellow vaccine package is like insane.
Borderline full power. Yeah, borderline full power at the current moment.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better things, and like that's kind of where like a lot of this imbalance starts to rear its head, is in formats like this when your card pool is super restricted. What do we have left? It really goes to show what tools are just naturally stronger than other tools, and based on how they're designing sets and designing particular decks, it's definitely felt. And this basically capitalizes on it, which brings us to like the main topic, is the fact that we do like have actually a lot of uneven game design. This kind of was first exemplified with the joke of all of the Agumons and the Greymon support. The fact that Greymon has been a deck since BT5 and is still just one of the better decks even today, all the way up to BT14 and beyond. Like, even in Japan in BT16, going into BT16, correction, Greymon still just not a deck to sleep on. Like, sure, you have to be faster than Apocalypse in BT16, but like, Greymon has the tools to be able to do it, and it still is just an insane deck.
Yeah, I mean the value from just being able to outright kill your opponent in one turn almost is can never be undervalued. Like, you can never look at that and be like, yeah, that's not good. Because if you're either one unprepared or play into it, you just lose. Like, it's one of those decks that can absolutely punish you for doing one misstep.
Yeah, and even with Ultimate Cup, the restricted card pool Greymon was still
It
borderline
barely
almost a full
changes.
powered deck, which
Plus, like it barely changes much.
yeah, which to me is like really silly and stupid. But like again, it just goes to highlight some of the problems with Bandai's like design choices on how not only just they're making cards, how frequent certain cards are showing up, and then just literally what other colors are doing. So like this all stems from like when Bandai actually starts any of their card games. This isn't a Digimon exclusive problem. So Bandai, for whatever ungodly stupid reason, they love to start their games with 4 of the 6 colors. Digimon started off with everything but purple and black. One Piece started off with everything but yellow and black. And their Battle
Yeah, it was
Spirits.
yellow black.
Yeah, Battle Spirits, I forgot what colors they didn't have, but they were missing 2 colors as well. Battle Spirits has a lot wrong with it, don't get me wrong. But like again, it's another Bandai game that started with 4 of the 6 colors. And then now Dragon Ball Fusion, or Fusion World, their soft reboot of Dragon Ball Super, it's starting with 4 of the 6 colors. And I'm just like, why? Just why? Because the problem then becomes when you introduce the other colors, they're already behind because they're one set worth of cards behind the other 4 colors that, they chose to start with. And I think that's incredibly stupid.
Yeah, it's like crippling them before they even get a chance to exist. And it makes zero sense.
Exactly. Like with Digimon, Black was borderline unplayable until BT7, and that's when it started to actually be playable, and that's because like, they shifted more towards archetypical design for decks, but like just what Dorugoramon was doing for Black was still putting a lot of emphasis on some Black cards that weren't seeing a whole lot of play that now were put into the spotlight because they finally had a deck that they could actually play. And then they started to bring it home with like Black X Antibodies and BT8, which transitioned to Alphamon and BT9. So like it really goes to show like when they create something, usually they try to give it a couple of sets of support to be able to, actually have it stand on its own 2 legs. And then once something is created, it's easier to support it because, it's actually established. Because Black as a whole still kind of struggles. It, to me, is more of like the anti-meta color, but like it does have some decks that are very hard to be able to pilot correctly. And part of that is from the card pool just not exactly being there compared to other colors, and then some of it is the archetypes within the color pie that it's working with just sometimes aren't even good enough.
I think more so Black's problem in this game, specifically Digimon, is that it doesn't have a, like, how do I say it? It doesn't have a role. Like it kind of is just like, I'm going to mash all the other colors together into one and not be good at any of them. Rather than like red hits you hard. Every time you look at red, you're thinking power. I'm going to hit you hard. Yellow, heal, removal, XYZ. Blue, source strip, bounce. Green, suspend, reducing their evolution costs. But then when you look at black, like what is their like identifier besides blocker? That's their identifier. Blocker as a mechanic is not good enough to be on its own. At least that was the intention when Black first came out. It was supposed to be the big wall archetype. I set up my wall, you can't deal with it. But none of the walls were ever good enough to really function as a boss monster. So then you got this mad scramble to be like, well, God, these all suck. Let's fix this by just adding stuff from the other archetype or other colors. And then now it's kind of just a Mod Podge of any effect, essentially. But they're never really the best at any of the effects. They're just like, I'm okay. And then now they have to be super careful because since it is that mod amalgamation of all those effects and things like that, they have to be mindful because the one time they were like, let's just go a little hard. We got Alphamon, Oryukin, Doru Greymon protection. So it's like they never can never make it right in terms of it just being like good and just usable, or they go way over the top and it's broken, or they go, well, now it's too good, now we have to hit it, and now this is garbage. So it's like it's never like a good medium, which is really hard. And as he was stating earlier, it contributes to that very uneven design, where players that are like my friend Mark Dye, who originally started the game playing only black decks, they over there they were getting hurt for the first 6 sets. There was so much copium in black. It was crazy. And now they get the one thing. So then when Alphamon finally was strong enough to be a deck, they were like, "Yo, black, it's our time." And then they just get hit because it's like, okay, this is way too good. And then you're like, oh, well, that leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth when they're sitting there and they're excited. They're at least the people that are like purists when it comes to like their decks being colors and things like that. Like, so for like the vast majority of players, it probably isn't a big deal. But for those niche players that are like, oh, I really want to play this color because this color is like speaks to me. This is where I like everything that this color has. And the Bandai does not do a good job of balancing the colors where every one of them feels even at all. None of these decks are on even playing field.
No, so just as an example, even just looking at some generic cards, like not to try to pick on Black more, but BT7 was like a really good example of this, where it's just like BT7 was known as the hybrid set. Like that's where everything had hybrids. So yes. So BT7, you had Takuya as a tamer, you had an Agunimon and a Greymon, or Burning Greymon or Vitramon that actually does something. Then you have all the other you have all of the other protagonists representing all of the other character or colors that were, doing something. And then you get to Black, and then Black has no tamer, and they get Grumblemon, just a generic vanilla hybrid, which we haven't had since BT4, so it's just like, okay, design pool wise, like card design wise, they're already playing with last year's designs pretty much. So like even just from that small of a perspective, when they're designing a hybrid for each of the colors, like they'll just randomly have one that just straight up sucks and you can't really do anything with. Like, granted, hybrids in of themselves are still absolutely insane, and at that time we're still like borderline staple territory, just because free not really free, but Evo on top of a tamer that's just left over. Cool, I could swing for game with that. It was just an easy auto include type of a card. Because decks weren't as fleshed out as they are now because of the lack of card pool. But like when it comes to being able to do anything else extra, like you couldn't trust certain things to have the tools to be able to do it because they just got straight up shafted in the design process. It's just like there was no reason why Tommy, as an example, couldn't have been the Black representative. And then we could have had like Grumblemon be thrown all the way in BT12 with the Lanamon design type stuff. Like we could have had it better presented and more evenly spread out, but instead Tommy was thrown in blue, and it was crazy.
I can't believe you're forgetting Gigasmon, the best hybrid ever to exist.
I mean, Gigasmon, like I said, it was that old BT4 design on hybrids, because each time we've seen hybrids, they've changed how the design is. So the base design is just a vanilla hybrid. It just digivolves on top of a tamer. And then that's for the human form. Then the beast form costs 3 and does something very basic. Then you get into BT7 design, where it's just like, okay, you have the human that wants to digivolve on top of the designated tamer, and then you also have the side evolution that wants that as well, while also having an upside for digivolving on top of other hybrids, because it could just evo for 1 on top of a Digimon of its same level. So, like, that's kind of cool. Then you get into BT12 design, where it's just like, okay, Now, side evolutions are name-based evolutions instead of just a generic evolve for one. And then it is just increasing what the capabilities of hybrids do even more. And I think like the BT12 style is a really good style to go with and continue. And I'm curious to see what other attempts in terms of matching flavor to mechanics they're going to do. But like I said, going back to the main topic, when in BT7 we got Grumble and Gigas, like it just felt very out of place because they were just getting their first design when everything else was on version 2 of the design. And like even when it comes to floodgates, like not all colors have equal access to all types of floodgates. And I think that in of itself is a huge problem, especially for where the current state of the game is at, just because now, depending on the meta, certain floodgates are good and certain floodgates are not so good. With the training cards, it puts floodgates like Syakomon in a little bit more higher demand versus something like Gazimon. Gazimon will still kind of be in demand, but you want to stop that reduction of Digivolution because, you know, the new hot thing everyone is going to be running is going to be reducing the cost of your Digivolution and not gaining memory as much. So, but not every color has access to that Syakomon type tamer, and that is part of the problem.
I agree. I don't know why that has been the case where they do that, where like every color should have all the floodgates. I don't understand why that isn't a thing. It's not like we haven't had sets enough cards in each set to do so. There's always like filler level 3s and
No,
crap
and then
like that.
some colors have more floodgates than others. Like red just literally got another floodgate.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, it's
Blue
nice
has
that
had almost all of them forever.
Yeah, red has 3 really important floodgates and it still doesn't have a Gazimon. And I'm just like,
Exactly.
really?
And it's like you could make the argument, sure, you won't even use all the floodgates, and you might only use a few of them here and there. But the issue is when the decks, let's say, don't have them and they want to use them, and now you don't even get the option to do so because, oh well, my color got screwed out of having a memory blocker. So I guess I'm either gonna use another color memory blocker, which you just won't do more often than not. Or you just forego them altogether, and then you just get destroyed by somebody that, if you had the memory blocker or the reduction blocker, whatever floodgate it is, then you could have played into scenarios. It's just having options is always necessary in TCGs. Period.
Right.
So like, them actively, it seems like they're just like no, not every color should have it, because it just they're so vehemently against printing them all, which baffles me. But
I think we're eventually gonna get there because like they did that same type of a thing with Dragon Ball Super where it's just like there's just this one type of floodgate where it's just like, yeah, so when this card is used after the first attack, you can't attack for the rest of the turn. And like borderline all the colors have it, and when I was trying to learn Dragon Ball Super for a hot minute, like it was incredibly boring going up against everyone in every color always having that floodgate in multiple copies sometimes because some colors had access to more. And I was just like, so what are we doing here? We're just sitting here doing nothing. But that was more of a specific Dragon Ball Super issue rather than a Digimon issue. I think like with Digimon, if Red had a stop memory gainer during the metas where that's important, Red has access to that tool, so it allows Red decks to be able to actually perform because it has the proper tool to handle the particular problem that the meta is going to be answering with. Like right now, a lot of people are afraid of like Fenrir Lugamon and just spawning a whole bunch of bodies out of nowhere due to all types of card effects, so people are looking at running Pamumon and Pillowmon. And those are like the only 2 cards that do that. So it's just like, okay, that puts a heavier emphasis on wanting to play green or yellow decks that can incorporate them, because if the strategy doesn't have an out to the floodgate, then they kind of just, they don't auto lose, but it becomes significantly harder to be able to do anything the deck actually wants to do. And having equal access is something to that type of a thing is something that I actually think is important, because, it, like, sure, you could say that, but that's part of the balance. Some colors have it, some colors don't. But it's just that generic of a tool that I think it's important enough where everything should have it. Like, if everything has a memory boost, if everything has a training card, why can't everything have a floodgate?
Yeah, I just don't see a reason for the the latter to be the case, them not existing. Like, the only reasoning that you could say they don't exist is because they're lazy. That's that they just don't want to do it, or they're actively choosing to do so. Which, if that's the case, that's even dumber of a reason.
I think they're trying to
So
be more careful because certain floodgates, based on their typing, can actually be a little bit out of control because Pamumon just fits immediately into Bloomlord and, by extension, any deck using plants, fairies, and vegetations because, it just so happens to be a green vegetation that fits with inside of what the archetype is playing around with. Or not archetype, that's more of a tribe.
yeah,
And then
tribe.
same thing with Pillowmon because both Pillowmon...
Vaccine.
Yeah, both Pillowmon and Cutemon are vaccines in yellow. So they just fit naturally inside of that tribe on what it's trying to play around with and do. So I think they're just trying to play it a little bit more cautious, which I get, but
I mean, you could just print them not in whatever tribe it is you want it to be. And just have them not be useful in the archetype besides it just being, like, for example, what is that one guy, the new Floodgate that came out for red? He doesn't fit in any good red deck.
Yeah, Gatsumon.
I was like, what red deck is like, yes, I love this Gatsumon, fits so perfect. Like, no, he's just there because he's a Floodgate.
Now, if they made him an Agumon, I think that would be
different story. That'd be incredible.
I think that's like what they're trying to avoid is like we don't want to make this Floodgate an Agumon for like very obvious reasons. But again, if those reasons are obvious, they should know what to make it and what not to make it kind of by default.
Yeah.
But I do think like Floodgates are at the point where they're important enough to be warranted one of each of the major ones in each of the different colors. Like some of the weird and wacky floodgates, like black, God, I'm already, black, no, not Kudamon.
Chumon, there's, Chikurimon.
No, it's the other one. I'm already blanking on his name. I'm so terrible. Kawagam or
the Kokuamon guy.
Yeah, Kokuamon. Like Black Kokuamon, like
the memory reduction.
Yeah, so like fine, you could have those specialized wacky and zany ones locked to colors, but I think like certain core mechanics, like those ones need to be open and more generic. And like this type of a thing kind of extends to like a lot more than just rookies, because like even just those straight up like when we first got the other memory boosts, like reinforcing memory boost, you look at that versus what Dino memory boost and it's just like, what are we doing here? Like why? Like why is this even a card? This is so bad it's like not even usable. And then you get something like Howling memory boost and it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, you could clearly see they're trying to favor yellow and blue versus green and red with flame memory boost. It's just like, these memory boosts are garbage. Like, give me something that actually is meaningful. And I think that just extends to the mechanics that some of the colors are working with, where certain mechanics are just straight up stronger than others. So like yellow's type of removal, if you're able to get a Digimon's DP down to 0, that deletion is functionally more powerful than any type of deletion in the entire game, because it is the rules of the game deleting the Digimon and not effects deleting the Digimon, so it bypasses certain removals. And like, sure, certain Digimon do have it can't be DP reduced, but that's still not very widespread compared to how much I can't be deleted, bounced, or returned to bottom of the deck. And like that, like what protections versus what removals we have is definitely a very important dynamic, because again, that just lets certain cards flourish more than they reasonably should. So we've
Yeah.
seen this with chaos degradation, just as the example, where it's just like once we hit BT9, when Greymon was working with the fact that you can't be blocked, bounced, or not blocked, bounced, tucked, or deleted, that covers pretty much 4 of the 6 colors that we have. So what's left to work with? Well, yellow, because it could put it into security, and then black to de-digivolve, and that's it. Like
Yep.
those are the only answers we have left, or just beat over it. But that's easier said than done,
Yeah.
considering
I
now
was
it has
like, yeah.
DP gain during the opponent's turn as well. So it's just like, yeah, it's becoming progressively more difficult to be able to remove that type of a problem.
Yes. It having just the amount of protection, as well as it just being a very hard bodies to remove, even on like the lower levels, like level 5s, and your level 5s being 11, 12, 13k, and level 4s being 10,000 to 9,000. That's pretty insane. Like, and with protection as well on top of them just having high DP. So it adds up. It's like a compounding effect.
Yeah, and like it just goes to show that certain mechanics are just not even, like they're just not even and on par with each other. Because like you had purple where at the beginning it can only delete in very special conditions where it's just like the Digimon needs to be unsuspended. Well, you look at that versus a Gaia Force and it's just like, well, I think Gaia Force is just better. Therefore, I have more reason to play red than purple. And like there's just very small stuff that like it does add up and build up based on the mechanics that stuff's working with. I think right now we're at a pretty okay spot where a lot of the colors for the most part are even in terms of like the samey style of tools that we got. Like everything kind of has an unsuspend, and if it doesn't have an unsuspend, it has a security attack plus to make up for the fact that it can't unsuspend. The colors that have both, sure, okay, now they're accelerating even further, and then not everything can just play out bodies for free. Um, but if you could punch through all of their security consistently, maybe you don't need to or care about that, just because like where the damage is coming from is different. Like suspending versus stunning, like there's just a lot of like weird intricacies where it kind of just shows some of the imbalances and unevenness in their game design. Like that's why blue for a long time has been like regarded as the best color, just because its level of card draw is borderline unmatched compared to any other color. The fact that it unsuspends and like a lot of things unsuspend, like that's just good because you could pair it up with security attack very easily in different ways to be able to just punch really hard. Red kind of has that inverse where it can punch really hard, but it doesn't have a whole lot of unsuspends. But the few it does, oh man, they're felt.
Yeah, they're absurd. They like feel borderline unfair.
And that's where like yellow and black, they're generally known to be slower colors just because they're trying to play more reactive based on their native mechanical identities, where it's like black again is trying to be that big wall defense. Let me just stop and control everything that the opponent's going to be doing. And yellow is just going to be like, you dealt me damage. Ha, that's cute. I'm going to ignore anything you just did and try to heal myself out of that. And I think like yellow in particular doesn't have a whole lot of strong tools to punch hard, which I think is fair and valid because if yellow could punch hard, racing yellow would be borderline impossible.
No, yeah, I mean, duh. That's not even a thought, brother. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're never gonna beat them in a rush.
which is why like a mechanic like recovery is like so highly regarded, is because of how strong it is compared to literally the entire rest of the game. Like Bandai was absolutely scared shitless to print anything good with recovery after they made the Jet Sylphie mistake that borderline cannibalized yellow and dealt some really devastating damage to the overall game design.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I think they did a massive disservice to the color.
And I think that's just because they underestimated what a mechanic can do. Like not Digivolve, Digisorption.
Yes.
Digisorption was an absolutely insanely stupid mechanic. I get green is just trying to go up really fast, and borderline everything can go up really fast now, just because of like the training cards and all of the memory generation and name-based evolutions making things even cheaper. On top of like memory buybacks due to tamers or whatever. So it's not like Digisorption right now is insanely stupid, but at the beginning it really was, where it was just like, yeah, nothing can just outpace what green can do, and then green just, because it was able to go up faster, just was able to punch face harder, just because, decks weren't able to be reactive enough. And that leads to like certain like design choices where Digimon, spoiler alert, does reward more proactive play. It does not reward reactive play, which is why you don't see a whole lot of control decks, let alone good control decks, is because Bandai does not want reactive plays. Granted, they want some more interesting lines of play, which we see with the ace cards having more reactivity, but that's just more of them having alternative ways to be able to try to balance their game, because all of the aces come with the overflow mechanic, as like, okay, the cost is reduced up front, but all of the cost is like in the back. So if the Digimon ever leaves the field for whatever reason, then you're in some hot water, giving the opponent a lot of extra tempo for trying to slow them down and use this card cheaper and more effective.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know. They just do such a weird job of printing things. They either make them so absurdly unfun to play against, or they're just awful beyond belief. And then there's no reason to use them.
Well,
Like,
like it is like they kind of do like to try to, every couple of sets they do like to try to push the envelope and then try to have other decks catch up to that new pushed envelope's level. Like right now, I think Shine, they tried to push the envelope. It wasn't like an insane push compared to some of the others that we've seen, but Shine was like, we are going to push the boundaries here in a very specific way. And then Lugamon comes in and is just like, okay, I could be on the same pace and same level as Shine. I'm not going above him. I'm not exceeding him. I am at his level. And I think like that's when Digimon is at its finest, is when everything else that they're designing is playing catch up to the new big bad. But when the new big bad like Apocalypse is just like that borderline broken and stupid and cannibalizing to the entire game, allowing certain decks and strategies to be viable just because of the tools that they have, I think like that's when things kind of become a bit of a problem. Like we're already going to experience like the Anubis apocalypse in EX5, where Anubismon and Merva is going to be absolutely stupid just because of how fast that deck can move compared to everything else in the game. And I think like that was them just trying to make EX sets good. So, like, we're just going to reach a compounding factor of like two broken sets back to back is not going to be very healthy for the game. Like, looking at BT16, I don't see anything that can beat Apocalypse in here at all, let alone anything that's keeping up and keeping pace with Anubis. I see a lot of good and cool and fun things. I don't see anything that's like hardcore going to break the meta, or even catch up to where the meta currently is.
no, I don't think there's anything close to getting as good as Apocalypse. And even like the decks that look good, they don't look good enough to where it'd be like, oh yeah, I think this can compete. So it's like, I don't know. It's like they made such a massive leap, and now they're like, okay, now we need to make these cards garbage. Like, I don't understand where
I don't think they're
the
that bad. It's just they're so like they're just trying to figure
they're
out.
fair.
Yeah, they're
Whereas
fair. That's a perfect word for it. Fair.
they're fair, whereas the Apocalypse One cards and the stuff in that set, a lot of the stuff actually in that set are not fair. So it's like, I don't understand where the discrepancy is coming from. Like, where the design philosophy of, okay, well, this set can be absolutely insane, but then the next one is just going to be garbage comparatively to the set. Do I think the BT16 stuff looks cool? Duh. It looks fun. It looks like a great time. I'm probably still going to have a fun time playing it. But, like, I can look at the cards and without even a shadow of a doubt know that they're nowhere near as good as just if I just said, screw it, I'm just going to default to just playing Apocalypse Mon Turbo or something stupid like that. Or just go back and play Anubis Mon or Lugamon or like
Part of
there's
part of that is in the types of tools that certain decks need. So like right now, we're in a very contentious position where a deck needs to have a dedicated searcher, it needs to have a dedicated card to set up its tamer for free, and if you don't have those two elements already, you're already playing behind what the opponent is going to probably be playing against you with. Like, and it needs to be all on a lower level too. It can't just be all, oh yeah, my Imperial Ace finally lets me set up my tamers for free. Like, that's a little too late because you already need to be set up in order to go into that darn card, and that card shouldn't be helping you set up even more. I think like that's part of the problem is like there is just those design imbalances where certain things just do get the proper tools to be able to compete, which is why certain decks haven't been able to compete for a very long time, is because they don't have those tools.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation that they've kind of shot themselves in the foot with, but I mean, it is what it is, and I'm not. It's not like I'm looking at the game as like, wow, the game is awful. It's going bad. It isn't that bad, but
No, it's
it
just
definitely
highlighting some of the silliness that Bandai does.
yes, that's a good way of putting it. And I guess it leans more into the topic of what we're saying, uneven game design, where just things don't feel like the same company is making these cards. Like one set feels absolutely insane, and then the next set just feels like, okay, what happened to the last set? Like where and I get you can't have it where like every set is absolutely broken beyond belief. I understand that because then that's a whole nother problem. But if that's the case, why not just make the sets tamer, more, controlled? You could still do things to make things better, but you don't need to go to the extreme of making things absurd. And then now you have to be like, oh, well, now we have to double back and try and help the archetypes that are garbage. But unless you're giving them the same level of ridiculousness, then it doesn't matter what you give them. Like, for example, this red, purple Imperial Dramon stuff that we've seen, like, it looks cool. It looks fine. But is it going to make the deck broken beyond belief? No, I don't think so at all.
No, that deck still just natively has systemic issues with it as just how it wants to function. But I think like a good example of this is like with BT14, all of the rookie SRs. Like you have Agumon, Digivolve into a Greymon for free if you have your tie set up. That's like free evolution is something to never ever underestimate. Like you look at that compared to Palmon, where it's just like, okay, Palmon lets you give the opponent's Digimon a debuff, where it's like, okay, it loses 2 memory, which means you're effectively gaining 2 memory. But
I
like,
have to meet a condition in order to get the buff, the payoff, essentially.
Right, and you have to play specific cards in order to make use of that ability because the opponent either A, just isn't going to have a Digimon, which means that ability can be completely useless, versus something like Patamon where you don't even need anything. You just raise and then you get it evolve for free out of your security. Like, sure, okay, you need your security to have the card for you to be able to do it. Same thing with Agumon, but like that free evolution just is what's separating some of these rookies in terms of their overall value and take. And we even see this in the secondary market where it's just like Patamon has a way higher average, like medium cost because of how good it is, especially for yellow as a whole, versus Palmon for what green is doing as a whole. Same thing with Gomamon. I think the Gomamon rookie is a really good rookie, but is it helping you be able to evolve for free to get up into your level 4, to try to get up into your level 5 and subsequently 6 to respond and react to the opponent? No. It's just keeping a body on field, which I think is good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not accelerating the deck.
It's a reactive thing rather than a proactive. Like, proactivity is what wins the game in Digimon, not reactive. So it's like, I don't like, I dislike it. And like, if you look at like he's saying how they're free evolutions, but in the like Patamon's case, it's a free evolution while also giving you the information of your security, and that alone is broken. They put that on a memory center, not a rookie. Like, so it's like, that's broken to be able to look at your security, be like, okay, I'll take a level 4, evolve over, then heal another.
And I think like part of the speed and imbalance of the game is really going to start to show just literally based on the rookies that we're seeing get played. Like, one of the reasons why Lugamon is so good is because, like, it doesn't matter if you're in a Lugamon or in a Lugarmon. Like, they're basically almost the equivalent in terms of what you could potentially do out of your raising. Because it's just like with AG on the field, or even without AG, Lugamon just sets it up for free, gains you a memory. You're going to be put to 1 by default, so boom, now you're at 2. To be able to evolve into that Lugarmon versus already being in that Lugarmon, not using AG to set up, but if you already have an AG set up, you're still gaining that 1 memory, so it's effectively almost like the same type of thing. And this is where like the training cards come into play, where it's just like, okay, any rookie that now can gain you memory or evolve for free just accelerates the deck that much further versus the decks that can't do it, because now they have that systemic advantage native to them that others just don't have. Like, blue doesn't have that level of explosiveness just because Gabumon or Gomamon is not letting you evolve basically for free out of your raising or gaining you memory to make your evolutions cheaper or more efficient.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's like theoretically it can, but you need a lot of things set up. Like, you would need a tamer that gives you memory, like the Joe that gives you memory when you trash a source. Like, the payout is predicated on you having layers of things, whereas like the Agumon, the Patamon, and the Lugamon, the prerequisites to get the bonuses are simple. They're very easy to do, and you're going to natively do them naturally while you're playing the game. So it ends up not even being a prerequisite because you're going to do it naturally. Whereas the other rookies are predicated on things happening or being in a very specific scenario to get extra effects, which then makes them worse.
And
overall.
This is kind of why I both like and I hate Ukamon as a whole, and like some of those like more generic staple cards, because Ukamon is a card that basically for every single deck can do exactly that same type of play, where it's just like, I'm going to raise out, gain memory, and then be able to gain even more value. Certain colors, sure, can use Ukamon a little bit more differently than others, depending on the style of deck that you're playing, because Ukamon does eat up at your rookie slots, but if you're able to, like, turn 1, get it out, and set up, the second you move your second Digimon out of your raising area because he refreshes it, you're already in like a vastly better position than what your opponent could potentially be doing in order to have stronger levels of more both proactive and reactive plays, because Ukamon setup just lets you be able to do more. And I think like those types of cards, like the rookies that let you do more, those are the ones that are going to make those decks and subsequently those colors, perform better than what other colors could and other decks could.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It's not even, and it's unfortunate because now they have to be like, you kind of have to be specific with what you're doing, but they have to be careful, and it just sucks. I think they're in a weird spot.
Yeah, like we also see this similar type of design extend into BT15 as well, where it's just like Biomon It's a searcher, like that's it. You start a main, you search for something. It's not help like it's helping you find your cards, but like you should already like if your deck is on point, you should already be finding your cards way more efficiently than that. It's not a bad card, don't get me wrong. It's just usually you're going to be digging anyway, and you would want your rookie to be able to provide you with a little bit more utility, like with Gabumon, where it's not the best, it's not gaining you memory, but it is still letting you draw a card, and which is still super important depending on the strategy. But it's also being able to give your Digimon blocker, so it's doing more than what Palmon is doing for some, or not Palmon, Biomon is doing for virtually something insanely similar, which is just increasing the overall consistency of your deck when you're raising out your Digimon. So like
Exactly.
that's just the borderline point of it is like they do favor certain things, certain colors, certain mechanics, certain decks more than others. And I do think that's unfortunate because like when I was trying to define what jank was, like part of the problem was just all of the imbalance in trying to take track of, what actually was jank versus what just got phased out of the meta. Like, those are two completely different things, but because something's not in the meta, some people might actually label that as jank. And I'm just like, that's doing jank the disservice because jank is, supposed to be the more wacky, zany, fun stuff that really doesn't work very often, but when it does, it's hilarious and you just want to sit there and laugh. Like, I can't sit there and laugh at, like, somebody comboing off with Imperial Dramon versus, like, Four Holy Dragons. It's just like, that's not necessarily on the same level.
No, I think they're just a little bit off. So it, yes. I mean, I can't agree even, could not agree more because it's just, it like, it's a very hard medium to find. Um, and Bandai clearly has favorites, which understand they're a business. They want to make the most money, so of course they're going to pick the things that will normally make them the most money. Hence, Agumon, Gabumon, all that other shenanigans, the main character syndrome crap. Um, but it it is doing the game a disservice as a whole when you see things like that. And I am happy that they do go out of their way and explore things. Like later on, we're getting the oh my god, what's his name? Goldramon X and the Phoenixmon X. Like they look cool. They look super cool and they look interesting. Um, do they absolutely break their decks? No, they're just good, which is fine.
Yeah, is it even going to
Uh,
bring their decks up to a meta competitive level? Probably not still, but again, they're still willing to support them, and I do want to at least applaud and praise when they do that versus just trying to make something more meta defining. And like you don't need to always try to make something meta defining.
Correct.
And like that just is unfortunately a natural thing in any trading card game. Digimon is no different in that, where they are always going to have some imbalances. Like Magic right now, black is absolutely out of control. It is stupid. Before that, it was red. So like they do just naturally have whatever they're trying to support and catch up and focus on be, the stronger and more supported thing that's getting all of that love and attention. And that love and attention going to that is making it so that others aren't getting as much love and attention.
Yeah, I agree, and it is unfortunate, but I mean, we'll see if it gets better. I do think they are doing more. They're going out of their not necessarily comfort zone, but they are doing more things to add
Yes.
like those obscure guys and things like that. I mean, we had like the finishings to the Gamamons, the level fives. We saw those leaks. Those are pretty cool. There's a few extra things that like I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Tyrant Kabuterimon, super cool. I don't know how good it is, but I think it's cool. Um,
Well, it's like
I'd have to see
that's trying to
practice.
support insects that they started with BT15. So like they
Yeah, it's
usually
interesting.
yeah, usually their pattern is when they create something, they do usually want to try to support it in the next set or two, or sometimes three. So
Yeah,
that way it keeps attention on it, keeps players interested, and like
more
that's kind
invested.
of, yeah, it keeps them invested. Um, Not saying that's a bad thing, even if the deck
No,
is bad. Like, it's still nice to see that they do that.
listen, my monkey self is over here playing Agubond in BT14. Uh, like, so it doesn't matter. I'll play the deck no matter what. I always find a way to bring it back every set, and and I like it because this set gave him. It sounds stupid, but they gave him a singular card. I guess two if you count the Ukomon. Um, I'll do a few actually because the Greymon. I'm using the Greymon. I'm using the Skull Greymon from the set, the Ukomon, and then the Tai himself from the set as well. So there's a few cards that can be just thrown in the deck. I also, I guess, am using the Secret Rare War Greymon in the deck as well. So that right there, and it's like a way to just bring the deck back to life, things like that. And it's the Skull Greymon could be looked at as intentional support, but the other ones are not necessarily intentional support, but they are for the deck, and it's super cool to be able to experiment with the decks that no one plays with anymore and things like that. Um, and I hope they continue to do so because I think there needs to be more of it.
Yeah, but like this goes like to try to bring things full circle. When they attempt to do alternate formats like Ultimate Cup, this is why those types of experiments generally fail, is because it's only highlighting their own mistakes more than highlighting their successes. And I think like that's why this Ultimate Cup is an ultimate failure. And I have no idea how the other Ultimate Cups during this time period of December through February, before we get like the good February, no alternate wackiness. Like, we'll see how well the others do, because I know there's PPG coming up. Unfortunately, I could still register for that. I'm not saying that as like a bad thing. If anyone who wants to play now, they can.
Yeah,
But it
you
only
jump in.
shows it only shows that like the fact that it didn't fill up already, and it kind of shows that like players just don't care and they're not interested, because usually like part of the problem that some people had with competitive Digimon is you usually have to like know so far in advance if you want to play in that event, because of the fact that it fills up super quickly, and they have signups like a month or two before the actual event itself. But the fact that you could still sign up for these Ultimate Cups is nice if you want to play in an Ultimate Cup. It just sucks it's going to be in a very slow, boring, and uninteresting format, only highlighting their design failures and like their own native favoritisms.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but it should be okay. I'm overall like we said beforehand, the state of the game is great.
I think like where the game is right now, BT14 is definitely one of the more interesting and entertaining environments, just because of how many things are viable, because everything's trying to catch up to Shine. They're not trying to exceed it. I think like in the next couple of sets, we're going to maybe have some shakiness, but hopefully they can have a good, a tentative ban and restriction to be able to try to bring things back to where they kind of should be.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that's a good note to end off on. So I want to thank everyone for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to help us out on social media to support the podcast. And make sure to share it with all of your friends and family who are interested in this type of subject, and be able to post it everywhere that you want or can, as well as leaving that rating, review, like, subscribe, follow, whatever on whatever platform that you're listening on or watching. And thank you again, and we will see you next time.